Well, it's lovely to be here. Linda, I met Linda for 15 minutes in Texas, and on the basis of that 15-minute meeting and a lot of emails and of course a lot of work and organisation from Linda, here I find myself in Orange County, which I'd always rather fancied coming to, and it's and I've had a delightful week here, and I'm still having it. Okay, I don't know if there's anything I can say about this that I've never said before. Is there anybody here who's going to be watching this for the first time? Oh, not bad at all. Excellent, excellent. Pride and Prejudice virgins, wonderful. Well, I'll say I'll say a little bit about how it started. In fact, Linda's given you a hint of the early pre-publicity, and how it came about really was that I was watching, and this goes back to quite early in the 80s. I was watching a screening of the 1980s BBC version of Northanger Abbey with Sue Birtwistle, who eventually produced Pride and Prejudice. Sue had been a student of mine when I was teaching at a teachers' training college, and she was a very forceful drama student who was always getting me to do things for her, and a natural producer even when she was still a student. She'd kind of get me involved in actually writing her end-of-term production pieces, and somehow me thinking she'd done me a favour. Anyway, we were watching this thing, and Sue leaned over to me and said, you know, this is all right, but what you and I should be doing is a really sexy version of Pride and Prejudice. So I said, yes, let's do it. And of course, what we meant by that was not lots of full frontal nudity and not, you know, lots of rolling in the hay and that kind of thing, but a recognition that sex is a very important motivator in not just in Pride and Prejudice, but in all of Jane Austen. And in fact, the motor of the plot in Pride and Prejudice is Darcy's desire for Elizabeth. Not his love for Elizabeth, he doesn't love her, he doesn't even like her. But something about her energy, her sassiness, the way she runs and gets herself muddy, the way her eyes brighten with the exercise. It's obvious what it is. It makes him follow around like a dog, and I'm sure privately howl to himself. So that was important, a recognition, because all previous versions that I'd seen seemed to treat Jane Austen's novels as delicate little social comedies in which ladies and gentlemen stood about, buttoned up to the neck, making polite conversation in rather shaky sets. And I wanted this to be about bodies as well as minds, for the whole production to recognise this is something about living, breathing, young human beings with all their hormones buzzing around. And I wanted it to be a lot of open air, a lot of moving about, and that the men should be like proper men, and that the girls should be like proper girls, and any opportunities that one could think of getting them out of those tight buttoned-up costumes should be taken. So lots and lots of backstage scenes. Obviously, you've got to have them when they're being polite and on full display, but lots of what we called hair and shoulders scenes for the girls in their bedrooms when they were talking about love and men while putting on or taking off their nighties. Nothing indelicate, but just a reminder that these are real girls and not just dressed up dolls. So a fair amount of that. And of course, I'm always getting into this kind of trouble with journalists because, you do an interview about something else and then they say, oh, and what are you writing at the moment? And then I get all enthusiastic and I say, oh, and I said, new adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. Oh yeah, and what's it going to be like? Well, it's really sexy, I'd say. And then they'd get all, their imaginations would get all fired up. And of course, the journalists, especially in England, are extremely mischievous. So they'd immediately ring up a lot of respectable people like bishops and the president of the Jane Austen Society and say, this Andrew Davies fellow is going to do a sort of pornographic version of Pride and Prejudice. And so Roy Hattersley, who is quoted there, who's not only a journalist, but was at that time a very prominent politician as well, just sort of went overboard and wrote a very pompous article about it. So it was great pre-publicity for the show, of perhaps not the most desirable kind. But there we are. I was trying to give it all these emphases, and indeed, talking about full frontal nudity, I did want Colin Firth to dive entirely naked into his lake, because I mean that was how chaps went bathing in those days, and I don't know how it came about that he didn't, whether it was Colin that chickened out of it, or whether the director didn't like it. There was some suggestion that he was slightly worried about love handles. And anyway, it proved the right thing that he went in the right way. But one of the big challenges is, I mean, this is a novel with the most famous opening of English literature almost. Truth universally acknowledged and so on. And there's a tremendous temptation to start the novel in the Bennet breakfast room with the family sitting around and all the girls and Mrs. Bennet saying, somebody's moved into Netherfield Hall. And I thought, if I do this, I'll just finish up somehow, just copying all the previous versions of it. I've got to have a new start, a different start. And fairly shortly before I wrote it, I'd been to one of those screenwriting seminars run by Robert McKee, the great screenwriting guru, who's a terrible, boastful man who ranted on about the right way to write screenplays. But some of the things that he said have always stuck in my mind, like never take the resolution out of the hands of the protagonist, and where there is sex, put it right on the spine of the story. And I thought, yes, good. But he also said, you've got to find the inciting incident. There's always something that gets the story going. And I thought it's not, well, a remark like, universally acknowledged truth is very profound and very witty and funny and ironic and all that. But it doesn't really get the story going. What gets the story going is an event that happens before the book starts, which is the day that Bingley and Darcy ride into Elizabeth's country and see Netherfield Hall, and Bingley, on a whim really, conceives the idea that he's going to rent it and live there for a while. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do, and this is going to get the story going in a nice new way. Instead of, nice girls mincing about in their pretty dresses, let's have some big blokes on big horses, in tight breeches, thundering along, kicking up the mud, and then let's put the girl up on a hill so that she can watch them. So they go galloping in the countryside, and then I took a deep breath and wrote my first imitation Jane Austen dialogue, because most of my dialogue is actually straight out of the book, but I thought I'd do this. But yes, they have a conversation. I think I'll take it, and Darcy says you'll find their manners somewhat savage or something like that. Country manners, I like them entirely. Then you better take it. And then, thank you, says Bingley, I will close with the attorney directly. And I thought, that's a good line. I will close with the attorney directly. And it was typewriters in those days. I'd pull the page out of the typewriter, ran upstairs to where my daughter was at that time revising for her finals. I said, look at that, read that. Jane Austen, it's good, isn't it? You'd think she'd written it herself. And she said, yeah, very good, Dad. Get on with it. And so that was how I got started. Yes, they do all that, and then it's very important to have a big close-up of the heroine, I always think, as early on as you can. So while the chaps are doing that, we shift our viewpoint and come on to Elizabeth standing on a good vantage point, thinking, wow, I haven't seen those chaps before, new blood in the neighbourhood, and wonder who they are. And something, she doesn't know quite what, makes her give a little skip and a jump and go running down the hill, because running is something Elizabeth does an awful lot, as I'm sure you know if you've read the book a lot. And down she goes. It's sexual energy, that's what it is. And that's what Darcy is responding to. I didn't actually write in the script the mare and the foal that you will see quietly cropping the grass as she runs past. I thought that was a piece of symbolism that perhaps was over-egging the cake, but all these things help to create the atmosphere. And I'm not going to go any further at this point, but I will, because it's quite a long bit to watch that you've got. I'll let you watch it, and those of you that survive it, I'll see you again tomorrow to introduce the second chunk. Thank you very much.